Hello, welcome to this month's painting tutorial. This month we're going to do another paint along with a simple small scene like this. So this is the scene that we're going to finish up with, and I'm going to show you step by step how we get there. So I'm going to start on a watercolor block, and the first step is I'm just going to mask out a border. The dimensions don't matter, I'm just making a rough rectangle. Now I'm going to block in the largest shapes with my pencil. So I'm going to look for the places that the top lines intersect the outer borders. This line, this line, this line, this line, and so on. And then sometimes it doesn't intersect directly, but you can kind of draw the line imaginarily up and see where it would intersect if it were to be continued. So this is a little bit over center to the left, and it intersects about an inch from the border. So I'll mark off the top point, I'll come down with my imaginary line and give myself a rough estimate for where the bottom of that building should be, and then I'll just sketch that in. Then I have the building next to it, and I have this sweeping curve of the curb where people are standing. And now I can fill in the smaller shapes like this little chimney on the building, a balcony on the side, and most importantly we have these people standing around, and we have some chairs visible here to help set the scene. And then I have these flags that are drooping across, and they add a lot of color and interest to the piece right away. Then I'm going to protect the white flags with some masking fluid. This is a masking pen. But after that masking fluid is dry, then we'll be ready to move on to the painting phase. Okay, everything is drawn and the masking fluid is dry, so I'm going to get my big flat and I'm going to put down that sky. Cerulean blue is a good color for a nice sunny sky. I'm going to put down a strong concentration at the top, carefully avoiding the chimney and the top of the roof here. Just use the corner of the brush and paint around those small details. And then I'm going to continue to drag that same color down so that it will get lighter as the color goes down towards the horizon. So that's all I'm going to do for the first pass. I don't want to move into anything else because those colors will bleed. So the next thing I'm going to do is just let this dry, and then we'll come back and do the buildings. When the sky is dry enough that you can move on to the building, I want you to paint the next biggest shape, which is this big building on the right. So that's primarily yellow ochre and some raw sienna. Use that big flat again, and I'm just going to paint straight over all of this stuff except the forefront of this balcony. Leave that white. Then just paint over everything else, and as it retreats to the back, let the color get a little bit more washed out. That will help with the realism again. And I'll add a little bit of that building color underneath this umbrella and around the people's heads. Then I'm also going to drop in a couple of bursts of some red or some more intense colors, concentrating my efforts on the area that's closest to the viewer. So this side of the building here. Then I can do some work on the other side as well, and this side of the street is more in shadow. So we're going to see more blues and purples. So I'll mix up a purple with some alizarin crimson and cobalt blue, and I'll use that to lay in the base tone over here. But I want it to look a little bit muddier, like a dark building that's in shadow. So I'll add a little bit of raw sienna and make that just a little bit more muddy looking, for lack of a better term. My highlights on this building are just the balcony. So I'll just paint in, and you need to keep your color fairly consistent so that it will read as all part of the same building. But do let multiple colors mix on the page. And I'm just using the brush on the corner and painting around the figure. Let's see, I think I can do one more thing. I'm going to go to the ground here and paint this pavement. And if it bleeds into the building a little bit, that can add some interest, so that's fine. But I've got this blue shadow shape coming down here. And remember, shadows go over people and they go over objects. They don't go around them. So when you paint shadows, Unless the people are supposed to be in front of the shadow shape is going to affect the people as well. When you're painting the street, let the colors mix together on the page again. So I have some straight blue here and some straight red. Those will mix together and make a nice shadowy purple. Okay, let's let this dry and then we'll come back and add some details. Lovely, lovely. So now let's start adding those lovely details. I'm going to start still with the largest shapes though. So I'm going to keep the big flat and I'm going to add a little bit of color to some of these red things. So this umbrella and a bit of red on this flag. Remove your masking fluid. You can use your finger or you can use a rubber cement eraser. And then I can use a little round. I can start adding the red that is in those flags since I already have some activated red there on the palette. Just adding some of these details will help the painting to really pop. Then as the flags get farther away, those reds need to be less intense to show that they're retreating in the distance. So I'm just going to wash out some of the color and continue painting that same way. Okay, not everything is red though. I've also got some green flags. There's a green stripe on that one. There's a green one there. I'll add a green one up there. And some yellow might be nice. Let me add a little bit of shadow color underneath this umbrella. And then I'm going to go through and add some of the shadow shapes. On the balcony on that large building, this side is supposed to be in shadow. And I'll add a little bit of raw sienna to the back building here. Give just the indication of some interesting windows on this building. And I think that that color dried a little bit less intense than I would like, so I'm going to go back with some brighter yellow ochre and just pop into it a little bit more. It's just better to have a little bit of interest there. I'm going to mix up a flesh tone. Alizarin crimson and raw sienna make a really easy basic flesh tone, and then you can just modify it with blues to make it lighter or darker. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to add a bit of a base flesh tone to some of these people's visible faces and their arms, ears, anywhere that I can see their skin. But make sure that you change it up. No two people have exactly the same skin tone. And especially in a crowd, you would expect to see a lot of variation. While that's drying, I'll just add a little bit of the wood color to these chairs, trying to keep it nice and simple and so it doesn't look overworked. I want there to be enough details that a clear story is told, but not so much that it gets tiresome. You want your paintings to look fresh and vibrant and inviting to the eye. So that means a lot of contrasts in tone, contrasts in colors, and just not overworking the details. So as you paint, you should always be looking for what is the essential information that you need to get across to tell a story that you want to tell, and leave everything else out. I'll add some greens to this leaf formation here. Then you can start adding some hair to the heads. And hair is like skin, you have to vary it up. But even in small shapes like this, you can have it look like there's a lot of detail if you will work the hair around those little ear shapes and give the people different hairstyles. The hair length, the part, the placement of the ears, all of these will help distinguish one person from another and add interest to your piece. The hair also is a big determiner in the way that the head is tilting. So if you want your people to be looking down, you can indicate that most easily with how you put the hair on their head. When the hair is done, you can do the same thing to add a little bit of color to the clothing. So just try to think about how the person is sitting. And because they're so small, you really don't need to look at anything for references to figure out how their arms would be going and so forth. You just need to sort of think about it. You've seen people sit, you know how they look. Let yourself try. Since they're so small, you only need to get it very vaguely correct, and the eye will fill in the rest for you. You don't have to copy exactly what you see, you should make it strong for your composition. I like to use a small round and just fill in little details here and there, letting my eye tell me when I've told enough of a story. Also, don't forget that people wear hats, they wear sunglasses, they carry bags. Extra details like this will bring more life to your compositions as well. Now when the clothes are on, I can add some details to the shadows in the tablecloth here. And I'll add the brown to those poles that are holding up the umbrellas. And some shadow shapes, some purpley shadow shapes. So here under the banister, it needs to look different from the rest of the building so it reads as a shadow right away. Blot one edge of your shadow so it looks like it's retreating. And then I can add the railing and some more little details like that. I can add some shadow shapes around this other table as well. And I'm just sort of filling in some shadows that are cast by this umbrella. So there's a big shadow shape that's cast by the umbrella right over some of these people. And then some small shadow shapes on the larger faces that you can see. We'll add a little bit of realism. You need to be able to see shadow shapes and put them down as big pieces and not fuss too much. Realistically, you're not supposed to see a lot of detail in things that are very small or far away from you. So if you, the artist, adds detail where you shouldn't see it in nature, the eye is going to have a hard time figuring that out. Let's do some similar work adding some windows on this building. And I can add a string to the flags. Bop. Now I need a kind of muddy fill-in color. I'm going to put that fill-in color right under here. We're just going to keep it fairly vague and nondescript. If you do it right, the eye is not even going to see it. And I don't want this whole thing to be all white, because then the other white specks are going to look less interesting. If I fill this in a bit, now the white that is popping out in other places is going to draw the eye even more. Now that needs to dry, and I'll do my last layer of shadow shapes. Now we're to the final details of the painting. So this is going to be just a matter of personal taste more than anything else. You decide when your painting is done. I'm just going to go through and I'm going to darken up some of the contrasts. I'm going to bring out a line of emphasis here and there. And then I also want to add some shadows to the chairs and anything that should have a shadow associated with it. So I'm just going to use my little round here, add some interesting shadow shapes. It doesn't matter if they're exact, but you do want them to make a bit of sense. So for instance, they need to be cast by something, and they need to be traveling the same direction so that it indicates the same light source. Now when you're satisfied with all those details, you can go ahead and remove your tape. The best step of all. Then there's your finished piece. Here's the first one that I did, and here's the second one. So here in the second version you can see that adding a little bit more details to the figures can add a bit more interest. But in the first one my colors are a little bit more vibrant. So you can compare and learn for every time that you paint a scene and take something away with you. There's some things that I like more about the first one, there are things I like better about the second one. So it's not just a steady progression when you're painting. There are things that you learn and things that you try to keep. But in watercolor, remember, it's going to be really fluid and it's hard to hang on to even the things that you want to. You really have to let go of the idea that you need to control the medium and let the medium do a lot of the painting on its own. But that concludes this month's painting tutorial. Thanks so much for watching.